Good afternoon, my dear students. I hope you remember that we have been discussing the epidemiology of various gastrointestinal disorders, and we already discussed acute diarrheal diseases at length in my last class. So for the coming few weeks, we will be dealing with the major gastrointestinal diseases of public health importance. So in that row of various topics, today I'm trying to discuss a very important pandemic of the past. Just like we are experiencing pandemic of COVID, people during the 18th century, 19th century, and also in 20th century, they had a wrath or a cruelty of a very dreadful disease, which was often spreading like a pandemic and causing deaths of millions and millions of people. It was largely preventable. People were actually helpless at the time of the pandemic, and a lot of people run away from the place where there's a pandemic and to be caught by pandemic in some other place. There was not even a time for them to rescue from the pandemic situation. And we can't say that we have completely eliminated this pandemic. It is still a possibility, provided the environmental sanitation, especially water sanitation, deteriorates in any future events. And in fact, this particular disease has been part of the life of people during the 18th, 19th and 20th centuries also. And each and every one knows when it is going to occur and helplessly wait for the pandemic to push through and cause death of millions of people. So this picture which I am showing you, I think it's self-explanatory. It's a bacillus, comma-shaped bacillus, right? Just got a flagellum, and this particular form of the bacillus is very peculiar and unique, and I hope you can guess what I am going to talk. Yes, anybody who can guess? Yes? Can you guess what I am going to speak on? Yes? Today I am going to discuss on the comma-shaped organism, which is popularly called as cholera, right? Cholera is was a household name in the past. Now, fortunately, we don't hear about it in a routine practice. You can see this picture of a great scientist, a great physician, with a lot of insight into the disease. And this great man is called as the father of modern epidemiology. And this great man has discovered, when there was not much of a knowledge about epidemiology, he was trying to deduce, he was trying to predict the disease, and also he was trying to find out a solution to end this pandemic. This great gentleman was is popularly called as the epidemiologist of the modern era. He was living in London, and there was a very huge spread of cholera in the city of London, and it used to spread from place to place in London. One particular colony is affected, another particular colony is affected tomorrow, like that. It used to spread like that. So he has found a very peculiar pattern of the spread of the disease. So he observed them and finally thought it may be due to the water supplies. And he started counting the number of cases who have obtained water from a particular bore well, and the people who have taken the water from this bore well, he studied them. He found that a large number of people who are taking water from this bore well are down with cholera. Okay, so from this he came to the conclusion that the water is contaminated, and what he did is the water is getting contaminated not from inside, but when the people are taking the water, the water is getting contaminated. He has removed the nozzle for the bore well, and suddenly he could stop the epidemic spreading to the other parts. This was the greatest discovery during that time, and he is the greatest epidemiologist. Even till today we can say that his way of thinking and his thought process was fantastic. So this is the story of John Snow. So I am going to discuss in detail the epidemiology and prevention of cholera. Okay. Definition is, it is an acute intestinal infection. It is not a chronic one. Suddenly people get into the problem. It is an acute episode. It has got a very short incubation. Sometimes it is as short as a few hours. You have taken a contaminated water or contaminated food, and within a few hours time, you get the symptoms. So, shortest incubation period. It is characterized by diarrhea. Diarrhea means passing of food stools. And the organism isolated from this is Vibrio cholera. What is the type of diarrhea you have? It is copious. It is copious. That means large quantities are passed on. Effortless. Usually whenever we have a diarrheal episode, there is usually some amount of abdominal pain, and you feel that you are going to defecate, and there will be some sort of pain during the passage of stools. But in the case of cholera, it is large quantities and it is painless and effortless. The patient is just sitting somewhere or sleeping somewhere. Without his notice, he starts passing the stools. This is a typical clinical feature of cholera. And it is totally watery. Sometimes it is called as rice water. Kanji, you say. It's kanji water. It looks like kanji water. So, anybody in an endemic area suddenly getting ill, and he starts passing large quantities of effortless rice water stools, you have to think or you have to suspect that it may be a case of cholera. Nowadays it is more and more pertinent that cholera doesn't occur in the form of epidemics. It occurs in a sporadic form. If we are not able to identify the sporadic form of cholera, it may get into a problem of epidemic. So, from the general practitioner point of view, identification of a cholera as early as possible should be mandatory, and also notification of such type of episode or sending of the stool sample for the diagnosis and confirmation becomes very, very critical, very important for the control of cholera. Okay, so by definition, cholera is defined as an acute intestinal infection characterized by short incubation period and also characterized by diarrhea which is copious, painless, effortless, and watery diarrhea. And on examination, it is the Vibrio cholera on the laboratory diagnosis. So this is the definition of cholera which you should remember throughout your medical practice. Historically speaking, it is one of the diseases which is known to us for the past several centuries. And a mention of cholera was also made by Hippocrates, and he was trying to describe cholera by means of rapid purging and rapid dehydration and death of a person within a very, very short time. And those days, whenever cholera epidemic or pandemic occurs, it used to wipe out one village totally, wipe out the whole, part of the town like that. So it is a disease of antiquity. That means it is known since several centuries. And it was a major pandemic form in all civilizations. In all civilizations, they have described the Roman civilizations, the Greek civilizations, and the other civilizations. They have described the major pandemic. And the one which is very much recent, which occurred in Ottoman Empire, which has killed almost 80% of the population of this area. It occurred on 15th July 1910 and it continued till January 2012, January 12, 1911. So it has almost spread across the Ottoman Empire for 6 months. 6 months. So it caused the death of several thousands of people. Killed 4,023 people. It's only reported, but it must have killed several thousands. Reappeared in Samson, May 1911. Again, the same episode continued. And 12,000 people died due to the spread of the cholera. So this is something which is alarming during those days. And please remember, these figures, the figures of mortality, are not very much reliable because the reporting was not proper during that time. Now let me give you the entire historical aspect of cholera from 19th century. 6 pandemics have occurred during 100 years period. Okay, so these 6 pandemics are well known for their rapid spread and also the death of a large number of people. Kill millions each time. Each time when it occurred, it killed millions. The first pandemic was reported in 1817. It continued for about 7 years, and the pandemic has started in West Bengal, now a part of Bangladesh now, and from Bengal it has spread to the nearby states, and then it has spread to Cambodia, it has spread to Vietnam, and it spread to entire Asia, and then it spread to European countries and became a very huge pandemic, first pandemic. The second pandemic, there was a gap of 5 years from the first pandemic, 1829, and it has run for about 8 years. right? So first pandemic was for about 7 years. The second pandemic has run for 8 years. And this particular second pandemic has started in certain parts of Russia. From there it has spread the entire Europe, and slowly it has come to the southern Asian countries also. Third pandemic occurred after a gap of about 9 years, but this time it has actually run for about 14 years. It was continuously causing death of people for 14 years. Again, the origin is from Russia. The fourth pandemic started in 1963. There was only 3 years gap, and again it has run for about 12 years. And it has again originated from Indian subcontinent. And the fourth pandemic and the third pandemic is they are very well remembered because of a large amount of deaths during these two pandemics. So that means 1846 to 1875, almost about 3 decades. The pandemic was almost continuously occurring. In fact, the gap between the third and fourth pandemic was very little, and we can say that third and fourth can be combined because the gap was almost negligible. And probably during that period of from 1860 to 1863, there were a few cases which are reported, but due to lack of communication facilities, they were being treated as two different pandemics. The fifth pandemic occurred after 6 years, and it has run for about 5 years. This time, the entire Europe was affected. After that, it has spread to the North American countries and also the South American countries. And this time, this pandemic has spread to a large extent to the African countries also. It has run for about 5 years, but the death during this fifth pandemic was very much limited when compared to the third and fourth pandemic. Sixth pandemic, there was a gap of about 3 years again, and it has run for about 24 years, quite a long time. It has spread from Asia, especially the Bengal and other areas, and is gone to Vietnam and Cambodia and Malaysia, and all these areas are very badly affected. It's also gone to China and Russia, and the entire world was affected by this pandemic. Again, the death rate was extremely high. So from this description of 6 pandemics, you can come to know that most of the pandemics had resulted in death of millions of people. And relatively, the pandemic number 3 and 4, which can be combined, it has caused the major death of the people during that time. Okay, so what really happened after 1923? Was there a period of total silence? Yes, it is true that after 6th pandemic, there was a lot of total silence from the cholera side. That's because of change in the pandemic bacteria. That is, the bacteria was classical Vibrio till 6th pandemic. After 6th pandemic, the classical Vibrio has disappeared, and we do not know where it has gone, and it was replaced by L-star Vibrio, which is less virulent, which is less fatal, and now we are still having this L-star Vibrio causing death of people in a sporadic manner. Now I will be showing certain pictures of the 6 pandemics. This is a picture shown which was depicted in Africa and the women are trying to say no to cholera. They are saying that the cholera, you go back, you don't want. This person on the left side with snakes and all, he is actually embodiment or a representation of cholera, and these women are trying to tell the cholera man not to come to us. It is a sort of a picture. This is in London street where the cholera patients were falling on the street. They had been lifted and taken to the hospital for treatment purposes. Now, after the sixth pandemic, we had a major pandemic in 1993. You can understand it was the sixth pandemic ended in 1923, and the remnants of this pandemic have occurred even up to 1925. So there was a gap of about 6 decades. During this period, there was no major problem due to cholera. But in 1993, we had O1 biotech Eltar Vibrio, which started spreading across the globe. And this has caused the seventh pandemic. It started in Indonesia in 1961, and people were not able to recognize this because the symptoms were not very typical, and symptoms are not very severe also. From Indonesia, it spread to 78 countries. Slowly and steadily, you can see that 1961 started, and the pandemic took about 3 decades to spread to 78 countries. 376,845 cases were detected, and 6,007 deaths were recorded by 1993. So when compared to the millions of deaths caused by the classical Vibrio, this is actually nothing, and almost negligible deaths. It is called pandemic because it has involved many countries, but it is not a severe type of pandemic, which was due to the classical Vibrio. The case fatality rate was as low as 1.8%. And I would like to recall that even the COVID case fatality rate in our country is almost 1.8% now. Globally, COVID is causing 6%, whereas our country is fortunate enough to have very low case fatality rate. Even during 7th pandemic time, the case fatality rate was recorded in this country was much lower than the global case fatality rates. So you can say that 1.8% is a negligible case fatality ratio. The distribution of cholera according to the regions, you can see that Americas, a large number of cases are distributed. Africa, 76,000. Asia, 90,000 cases as far as 7th pandemic is concerned. In fact, during the previous 6 pandemics, it was almost reverse. Asia was affected most, and Africa in the middle, and Americas affected the least. So it was a sort of a reverse. So when the agent has changed from the classical to the Eltar, the areas affected also has changed, and it has actually caused more deaths and more cases in Americas, in both north and southern. Now this is a picture of cholera as it is reflected during the 7th pandemic, as reflected right now in some of these countries are still having the risk of cholera. The current situation, which was actually given as a report from WHO 2017, 12,27,391 cases are detected, and the death is only 5,654 because the cases are not very severe to cause a great fatality. So the case fatality rate is less than 1, and 34 countries have reported LTAR Vibrio cholera cases. So it is now almost negligible when compared to the previous situations. Now let us see the agent factors. First and foremost thing that we have to remember is that cholera organism is a bacterium. It's a comma-shaped organism. It's Vibrio cholera. Vibrio cholera. LTAR variety has completely replaced the classical type now. And this particular agent is transmitted by contaminated water and also contaminated cooked food. The food is cooked and it's kept outside without consumption. There is no lid also. On that, the housefly comes and sits, and the housefly has already visited a place where there is cholera organism, namely the stool. The patient must have passed the stools, and it was sitting on the stools where the cholera organisms are sticking to its legs, right? And again, immediately it comes and sits on the cooked food. Cooked food that gets contaminated with the organism. It's also due to the improperly cleaned raw vegetables, and it can survive on a variety of foodstuffs for up to 5 days. And it can survive the freezing temperature. That means if you are eating the ice cream, which is contaminated with cholera, that you are still having the risk of getting cholera. That means the organism has entered the milk, and the milk was used for preparing the ice cream, and that ice cream, the organism is not killed even though it is freezed, it is frozen, and then the organism revives when once it enters the body and then starts causing the disease, right? Okay, so these are some of the agent factors. The major agent factor was Vibrio cholera, and now we do not know where it has gone. LTAR has completely replaced the classical type, and this LTAR is transmitted by contaminated water, contaminated cooked food, and improperly cleaned raw vegetables, and survive on a variety of these and survive freezing temperatures. Let us continue the agent factors. The incubation period is about 7 days. I told you that the incubation period can be as short as few hours. Okay, and the incubation period may go on up to 14 days. The period of communicable, that is the period during which the organism can be transmitted to other persons, is about 10 days. It starts even before the clinical symptoms, and after about 3 or 4 days of the purging, it is not communicable, because when the organism is excreted out, the rapid purging, the organism also removed out, and though the person may have loose stools after some time, it may not contain the organism. We have got, it's very famous, cholera is famous for carrier stage. There are 4 types of carriers. Chronic carriers are more common. Houseflies involved. It can occur in endemic form or a sporadic form also. It is not occurring in the epidemic form now. Please remember this. A disease which was in a pandemic form has come down to a level of sporadic form. That shows that the organism has come down in its virulence, and the organism is occurring only in a very, very small number. Nowadays, the large outbreaks are extremely rare, except in certain African countries where it may be a very small epidemic that can occur locally. But we do not have the large outbreaks. Now coming to the host factors, any age, any sex, it can occur even in an infant, unlike other diseases like malaria and some other diseases which are not common among the young children, but cholera can occur in any age group. Both sexes are equal effect. There is nothing like more among the males and less among the females, nothing like that. It can occur both the sexes, any age and any sex. It is largely nowadays related to the low socioeconomic status. Slum areas are very badly maintained rural areas. They are the areas where you get a lot of these cases. The cultural practices where the people are having the outdoor defecation, open defecation, and they do not maintain minimum hygienic standards because of their cultural practices. Urban slum populations, and it is disease of young children. Young children are more affected when compared to this. Though it can occur in any age group. During the young children, that means the children in the age group of 1 to 10, they are highly affected. And if the child is breastfeeding, the risk of getting cholera is extremely low. And it is very much related to gastric acidity. When there is a reduction in the gastric acidity, the cholera organism survives in the gastrointestinal gastric juices, and it can pass on to the intestinal small intestine and cause disease. If the gastric acidity is good, these people are usually spared. Even though they consume contaminated water, contaminated food, their gastric acidity is good, probably they are spared. Now coming to the environmental factors, again the fairs and festivals. And India is very popular for fairs and festivals. There are several festivals, almost every month we have 2 or 3 festivals, and every month we go to temples, every month we overcrowd every places, and every year we go to many rivers and take bath. We go to many temples and there overcrowding occurs. And every time whenever there is a festival in this country, we used to get the cholera problem during that time. Okay, so the first and foremost environmental factor is fairs and festivals. Again, a large number of people taking bath in the famous rivers in the name of the religious practices. A dip in on the Ganges is supposed to be very pious and religious, but at the same time, when these people are drinking that contaminated water, they were getting cholera during that time. Okay, so the religious practices are again some of the environmental factors that you should know. Then the third environmental factor is flooding. Wherever there is a flooding, we have to think in terms of cholera spread. So whenever there is a flooding, previously we used to give cholera vaccination. Nowadays, because the cholera, the existence is low, we are not bothered. But about 20 to 30 years back, we used to cover all the population in the flooded area with cholera vaccination. Disasters, wherever there is a disaster, wherever there is a sort of a calamities, cholera is the first disease to occur during those days. So the agent factors and the host factors and environment factors, they suggest very clearly that wherever there is a low socioeconomic status, wherever there is a overcrowding, wherever there is a sort of a decreased hygienic practices, cholera used to spread during those days. Even till today, some of the areas in African countries, they are very badly maintained, unhygienic practices are there. is still there as an endemic form in some of the African countries like Nigeria. Now let us go through the clinical features quickly. The effortless liquid stools. Effortless, there is no solid material at all. It is full of water only. It is rice water, congeized. Vomiting begin with rapid purging. There may be 1 or 2 episodes of vomiting, and then there is a rapid purging. And because of the rapid purging, people are dehydrated very, very quickly. Within 2-3 days time, they used to get into severe dehydration conditions. Mild and moderate cases are predominant. The proportion of mild and moderate cases is about 70 to 80%, and only 20% used to get severe dehydration. A typical cholera is less than 10%, whereas the remaining 90% of the people, they used to get very mild and moderate type of cases. Case fatality rate in the case of severe dehydration, severe cholera cases, it was more than 50% in untreated cases. If the dehydrated patients are not given intravenous fluids, they used to die very rapidly. This is still happening in certain African countries where there are very low standards of health infrastructures. Now, very important thing that you have to remember is that though cholera is not very common nowadays, it becomes mandatory whenever there is a suspicion that it is cholera, you have to do the laboratory diagnosis. If you don't do that, the disease may spread and may again cause the pandemics. So you have to understand how the laboratory diagnosis is done and why we should do the laboratory diagnosis. Now, you have to see that the collection and transportation and examination methods you have to remember. The stools should be collected. Vomitus also is a material to be collected. They contaminate the suspected water which has caused the disease should be collected. The contaminated food should be collected. So these are the materials to be collected. One is the stool material, the vomitus, and contaminated water and contaminated. The stool materials, you should remember effortless stools and watery stools. There is no farm stool at all. It is rice water stool. If any person is passing stools like this, you should think in terms of cholera and start collecting the stool samples. We have got several serological tests and several biochemical tests available in the microbiology departments. One is the polymyxin B sensitivity test. I'm not going to discuss about it because it is not a microbiology class. A direct hemagglutination test, phase typing, cholera phase typing, VP reactions, especially when you want to diagnose the carrier stage, hemolysis test, and dipsticks test. These are the various types of serological and biochemical tests available for cholera now, and all these things can be used to rapidly diagnose a case of cholera so that that particular spread can be completely stopped. Now, more and more people are preferring nowadays a very simple and easy to demonstrate hanging drop method, right? Hanging drop method, the most popular one, the infected material inoculated with krypton water, a telluride medium is added there to see that the organism will survive for some time. Subcultured in the bile salt agar medium, and then put on a cover slip and put in the on the slide. A separate, a very a unique type of slide is available. You have to just put it on the slide and observe without any staining under the microscope. You can see the darting movement of the Vibrio cholera, which is very, very characteristic of diabetes. You don't require all those biochemical tests if you can recognize the darting movements of the cholera organism. So hanging drop method, very simple and most popular. Now we come to the most important aspect of the topic today, because when once you recognize a case of cholera, you have to start thinking about the control measures. The disposal as human feces which is contaminated should be hygienically done. An adequate supply of safe drinking water should be given, because the water is already contaminated and consumption of that contaminated water may be dangerous. So immediately replace that contaminated water with safe drinking water. You may have to supply the water to that village which is affected from a different source, and ask them not to use the local water supplies, like the wells may be contaminated, the lakes may be contaminated, and even the shallow wells may be contaminated. So you have to remember, the first step that you should do is that advise all the people not to drink the local water and start supplying them water from outside, which is a safe water. And then also you have to again advise them not to eat anything outside, because the hotels and all the restaurants, they may be already having the organism in the food. So tell them not to eat from the outside. It is better to eat foods which are prepared at home. And you can start disinfect, because you cannot supply the safe drinking water for a long period. So for that, you supply for about a few days and then start disinfecting the wells. It is very easily inactivated by the chlorine, and special care should be done during festivals. And disaster preparedness includes the disinfection of the wells. So like that, the control is nothing but the management of the human excreta and management of safe drinking water and management of food hygiene, and also especially the management of the festivals and the disasters. So if you take care of a few important hygienic measures, we will not get into any problems. Now, when once you have a few cases of cholera, you have to do the improvement of the hygienic condition, but at the same time, it is mandatory to cover the people with a vaccine. Nowadays, you got a very efficient vaccine. It's an oral live attenuated cholera vaccine, and it has got the CVD 103 HGR. It is obtained from Canada, and it's given free of cost to all the developing countries. It's a cloned strain of Vibrio cholera, which is effective against the Altar Vibrio. Single dose after reconstruction. It's only oral dose, so easy to administer, and you have to administer 1 hour before the food or drink. And you have to, after giving the oral vaccine, you have to tell the people not to drink and not to eat anything till 1 hour, so that the organism goes into the stomach, goes into the intestine, there it multiplies. Vaccine organism multiplies there and causes immunity. The local immunity is caused, so that the further attack by the wild organism it can be easily stopped. Recommended in all persons above people aged more than 2 years, and it is not generally recommended people below 2 years, because there are certain complications that can occur with this people. So what will happen if the child is not covered with the vaccine? So the child should be given health promotional measures. The protection due to this, vaccine is temporary, and once the effect of the vaccine is over, again he is susceptible for the disease. And in fact, when the vaccine is given to a population, the organism is excreted through the stools, and from the stool it can spread to other, just like the polio virus. Herd immunity can be. Then we have 3 inactivated vaccines, which are very cheap, and it can be easily administered, and it's equally efficient like the live attenuated vaccine. Especially for countries like India, where we can't afford to get the vaccine in large doses, large quantities, so inactivated vaccines are preferable. I told you that it's free, but it is not always given free in large quantity. That's why the alternative for the live vaccine is you have got inactivated vaccines, and there are 3 types of vaccines. One is Dukoral, the other one is Sanchol, Evicol. These are the 3 types of vaccines. But Sanchol and Evicol are almost same vaccines, whereas Dukoral is slightly different from these 2 vaccines. But let us see what is the description of these 2 types. Dukoral is recommended mostly for travelers. That means a person who is living in a non-endemic area is going to an endemic area, and there is a risk of getting the cholera in that area. So he may be given the vaccine. A buffer solution is required, and whole cell with the B subunit, especially the O1 variety. 2 doses should be given for adults and 3 doses for the children. Again, the children below 2 years should be spared. 65% efficiency in children 2 years. 65% efficiency for about 2 years. After 2 years, its effect goes off. That means after 2 years, you may have to give the vaccine again. Say for instance, somebody is traveling to African countries where there is a problem of cholera there. He may take the vaccine before reaching that place, and after again 2 or 3 years time, he will be going to that place. He requires one more vaccine. If he is going within 2 years time, probably there is no need for a dose of vaccine for that person. Okay, I told you it is mostly for the travelers. Now coming to Sanchol and Evicol, it's a bivalent vaccine with 0139. There is no buffer required. 2 doses and 1 booster after 2 years. When once a booster is given, it's effective for 5 years. Okay, so try to understand the differences between Dukoral and Sanchol. It may be a short notes for you. Inactivated oral vaccines in cholera. So Dukoral is mostly meant for travelers. The buffer solution is required. 2 doses are given. It's a whole cell vaccine, and it is 3 doses for children, 2 doses for adults. Its efficacy is only 65%. As far as efficacy is concerned, it is almost same in all these things. But it's effective for 2 years. After 2 years, again you have to give 2 doses. Whereas in the case of the Sanchol, 2 doses are given. After 2 years, you give 1 booster dose, and the person is protected for 5 years. So, from the point of the expenditure, Sanchol and Evicol is better than Dukoral vaccine, because only 3 should be given here. Here it's more than 5 doses should be given to do 5-year relief. Okay, so these are the 3 oral inactivated vaccines which are recommended by WHO. Now coming to this secondary prevention, oral rehydration, intravenous fluid should be given. Tetracycline is antibiotic of the choice. Chemoprophylaxis is indicated in certain, say for one case is detected in a house, and the contacts can be given tetracycline chemoprophylaxis. It reduces the risk and also reduces the volume and duration of this one, and case fatality rate is also reduced, and the period of community is also reduced. So tetracycline is the antibiotic of choice, and previously, now it is not followed. Previously, whenever we want to go to Saudi Arabia, they used to ask for the vaccination and also tetracycline as a chemoprophylaxis method before you start going to Saudi Arabia. Now they are not asking. Now WHO has given cholera kits, and it has also established a global center in Bangladesh. It is meant for diarrheal disease and cholera, and it is there in Dhaka, and it is recommended a cholera kit is got 6 components. One for the diagnosis, one kit is meant for diagnosis, one kit is meant for investigation, and logistic materials for this one, and 4, 5, and 6, these components are meant for the central area and community and the peripheral areas. These are the kits which are given and put under cholera kits. Each kit is meant for 100 patients. So this is the cholera kit which is supplied by WHO to all the endemic areas. So this is the pictorial presentation of cholera kit. This is again a pictorial presentation of the prevention. You can see here, wash your hands, drink of safe water, cook food well, keep it covered, consider vaccination if there is any problem, clean up safely and in the kitchen and places, both in washing clothes. And these are some of the prevention tips for cholera. And the major thing is the water, washing of the hands. Now, there is an initiative known as Global Task Force on Cholera Control, GTFCC, and it started in October 2017. They want to reduce the deaths by 90%, eliminate cases in all 20 countries which are now reporting, and containment of outbreaks, multi-sectoral approach, and global partnership. These are some of the objectives of this particular initiative, which is called as Global Task Force on Cholera Control. Now finally, a small tip for all of you as a general practitioners. Please remember these tips very much, and what is your role as far as cholera is concerned. First of all, whenever there is a suspected case, you should go for confirmation of the diagnosis. The suspicion starts when a person is rapidly purging and it is effortless, and also rice water stools. And once you have a confirmation, isolate all these confirmed cases so that they are not spreading to other people. And the notification to the local government, previously the government, the WHO made it mandatory to notify to WHO. Now it is not required. Notification to the local government is more than sufficient. Local government need not further notify to WHO now. Previously it was mandatory. And wherever the case was detected, the area should be disinfected with the bleaching powder, and instruction to the contacts should be given the tetracycline as a chemoprophylaxis, and sanitation has to be improved. It includes the treatment of the chlorine treatment of the wells and all the water sources, and food and water sanitation has to be maintained in the area. You may be working in a primary health center, you may be working in a urban area, and whenever you get a suspicious case of cholera, if you do follow these steps, you will be helping the community, because instead of having a very large problem, epidemic, you can contain it for a few cases, and you are actually saving the lives of many people. So, do have that suspicion in mind about cholera, and in fact, I have seen a very few cases of cholera during my practice, and we cannot say. And tomorrow there may be, not tomorrow, in future there may be some variant varieties of cholera, especially whenever there is a flooding and whenever there is a disaster. So with this, I conclude my topic on epidemiology and the control of cholera. To sum up, I would like to tell you that cholera is a very devastating disease in the past, and it used to cause death of millions of people. It has caused 6 pandemics, and 7th pandemic also was there, but it was not very severe. And after that, cholera has assumed a very mild profile. In that, now we get only the sporadic cases, and the cases are limited only to certain endemic countries in Africa. Rarely it is seen in the developed countries and developing countries and other places. And here I would like to mention that China has developed a wonderful vaccine for cholera, which has actually got more efficiency than the cholera vaccine that is being used now. I told you that cholera vaccine, which is now being used, is 65% efficient, but the vaccine that is used by China has got efficiency of more than 90%. But unfortunately, they are not ready to give the technology to the rest of the world. Those people want to prepare for their own, and whenever there is a problem of cholera in any place in China, they are using this vaccine, but they are not ready to give it to the people. Okay, so with this summary, I would like to conclude, and thank you very much. Wish you all a very happy Independence Day, and let us be committed, and let us be Indian, patriotic Indians, and help this country as much as possible with our epidemiological knowledge and the clinical knowledge. Thank you very much.